Alrighty. Welcome to episode 7 of Full Circle. As all the other 6 episodes before, I'm Chad. Feel free, if you're new to the podcast or videocast, whatever this is, go back. I have an intro episode that's about 5 minutes long, and obviously 6 other episodes before this, so feel free to check that out. Tonight, what we are going to talk about is there was a mini spoiler on Bell of Lost Souls for Una the Sky Hunter, so we will be talking about that. We will then talk about a few model unit entries and possibly the Wurmwood list that I've been playing, just sort of talk through a little bit with that. There's been a lot of talk about Wurmwood, so I'm not sure I'll have quite as much to say about this as the Tanith list, but we'll probably discuss it. But first, the more exciting news is that we have a little bit of information, and obviously we're only about a week away from having all of the information, but we have a little bit of information about Una 2, so we're going to discuss that real quick. I'm going to try to pull up the actual link. I should have done that ahead of time, but I did not. In any case, and actually give me one moment. Technical issue here. We're very unprepared tonight. Spent all my energy getting my beautiful backdrop to work. Alright, so Bell of Lost Souls today posted one teeny little rule from the back of Una's card, and that teeny little rule is actually pretty big. We obviously don't know really most of what she does, but she has a rule called Birds of Prey, and that reads, while in Una's control range, Griffin Warbeasts in her battle group gain flank with another Griffin in Una's battle group. For those of you unfamiliar with the flank rules, it states when a model with flank, in this case flank another Griffin in Una's battle group, makes a melee attack against an enemy model in the melee range of another Griffin in Una's battle group, the model with flank gains +2 to attack rolls and gains an additional damage die. So that's the only rule spoiler we got. We did, there was an art, there was a concept art article, that's a sort of awkward to say, that was posted, and there wasn't, and I would say go check if you like art and the artistic side of the game, definitely go check out that article on the main page. But if there wasn't really a whole lot of information in there, but one mention was in her sort of description that she has wind magic now. She's discovered wind magic as she leveled up, or whatever it is they do. And so I did a little bit of poking around. I mean, we can sort of in circle take a look at some of the Krugers to get a sense for types of wind magic. I also took a quick look in the IK RPG Unleashed just to see what spells were in there, kind of to see if there was anything. Most of this, I didn't see really any spells that we don't have some somewhat close example of in the game already. But with one exception, there was a spell, and I'm not remembering the name of it. I didn't leave the book out. Where which was basically a wind-based equivalent to Temporal Barrier on Haley 1, which costs 4. Would be Fury in Una's case. I don't really expect that we will get that spell, especially with flank already. That might be a bit much to subtract 2 more defense from everything in your control area and stop. I don't expect it to stop running or charging. They've kind of toned way back on that sort of thing. I also, the -2 speed aspect of that spell on Haley 1 feels a bit much for the sort of spell list that we see in Hordes, but it was interesting. What I did see was some of the expected type of spells, so telekinesis, some interesting ones that we don't have in circle, like Boundless Charge, Tempest, and so forth. Deflection, and actually it was deceleration, but I think deflection's probably more thematic in this case. Gale Winds on Kruger 1 would be really interesting. I would suspect that that will be a signature spell for him, but you never know. Obviously, lightning type spells, Chain Lightning, Lightning Storm, Forked Lightning, I think probably falls into that category as well, and so forth. So, not really a whole lot of, and obviously like Razor Wind, range 10, power 12, very basic damage spell. And I think it's not out of the realm of possible for them to come up with some new wind spells. I mean, it's a pretty wide open sort of concept. So, but the bigger news is that flank rule. So, there's already been a little bit of crying that Circle Christmas is starting all over again, just from one tiny little rule. I've talked to a few people about it. So flank is an interesting thing, right? So we have the ability to turn a Scarsfell Griffin, which is probably the best target for that ability, or the best use of that ability, can be turned into a Mat 8, POW 12, 11, 11 Weapon Master with the ability to buy 3 more POW 12. So that's a pretty healthy amount of damage. It's not, if we can't take... we don't know if she has limited battle group yet or not, so if we can't add any primal to that mix, that's where it's going to cap out, and I would say that that's actually pretty low on the damage curve. Workable, but low. Primal starts pushing that into the very, very strong range. We talked last week about Tanith and getting those Griffins up to power 16, Mat 8 with primal, scything touch, and generating free charges and whatnot. And this would be with primal at a POW 14, and then a Weapon Master, which is about a 1.5 on average damage better, but with obviously the ability to spike the rolls much higher. So, and in 6 attacks, that's certainly not unheard of. And the odds of going lower than that are low. So it's very strong. I don't know. Originally, one of the staffers said he was playing her with 2 of each of the Griffins. So 2 Razor Wings, 2 Scarsfells, 2 Rotterhorns. And we'll have to see what the rest of her list actually does. But at the moment, it feels strongest just with the Scarsfells, because that's going to be the beast that's going to be able to trade up on like a heavy or something like that. I do think the Razor Wing's pretty interesting, if possibly is the way to set that up, since he can trample without taking free strikes. He has the ability kind of to get anywhere on the table that he needs to, and I haven't done a lot of testing with them at all yet, but that's certainly an interesting piece. The Rotterhorn, I think, is still actually pretty strong if you're going up against a lot of lightly armored, high defense troops that you want to take out. And we'll definitely talk about that beast more down the road as well. We're not in a position to do that just yet. So it's a strong spell. A lot of the crying of, oh my god, it's overpowered, I think we do need to keep in check. Obviously, we don't know the rest of her card, and that's going to make, if this is one rule out of many amazing rules, then we'll see. Flank, though, I've talked to a friend of mine who plays a little bit of Legion, and the Shredders have flank there, and the thing to keep in mind is the first one that gets there is not getting any of those bonuses, and you have to get something there to get those bonuses, and Shredders are 4 points apiece, so it's not too hard to get one there, and if you're throwing one away, it's probably not the end of the world. Griffins start at 7 points, and they're 7, 7, and 8, and so now you're committing no less than 14 points to a model and up to 16 points, which is heavy territory. That's more than the amount of points that you're committing to a heavy warjack, and it's more than the most of the heavy warjacks costs that people are playing, or very similar costs. to some of the more premium ones, and it's only slightly less than what most of our heavies like the Warpwolves we've been playing cost. So I don't think we're really too far into the realm of overpowered like people are thinking. It is very, very strong though. Being able to go up to Mat 8 is also important. Griffins are obviously the fastest thing. War Beast wise, we have, aside from we know the Storm Rapper to be equal speed, and we do have the Cav models that are a little faster, but it's just a really strong. It's really exciting. I've been dying to get my hands on her as quickly as I can, and War Machine Weekend's a little over a week away, and we'll definitely make sure we get a hold of her there. So I don't really have a whole lot more to add, but exciting news coming out about Una. We will probably in the show 2 weeks from today, unless there's more news about it before then. I would guess by then I will have thoroughly thought about what I want to do with her. I'm hoping maybe to have a model to show you. We'll see. My painter's arguing with me about that. It's going to happen. Either way, we'll talk about Una when we get her full rules. Maybe we'll have an emergency War Machine Weekend cast, and we'll talk about her there. That said, let's not a whole lot more to go into that. I mean, we still need a spell list, a feat list, usually just the 1 feat, some rules on the front of her card, figure out what her weapons do, etc., etc. So, exciting news, but we need to do a little bit more. We need a little bit more before we can really evaluate. So, let's go on and talk about a warlock we do know about, and that is Grayle the Farstrider. So, Grayle is our only Wolfsworn warlock, which I imagine will be relevant. It is relevant with some of his synergies, and it's probably going to be relevant as more themes come out. He is Speed 7, Strength 6, Mat 7. Nobody cares about his ride, doesn't have a gun. Defense 15, Armor 16. He's Command 9, which is important. He has Pathfinder and Native Stealth. He has 2 Hunting Blades, which are range 1 inch, and are POW 10 Weapon Master magical weapons. He has 17 damage boxes and is Fury 6. He brings 29 War Beast points to the table. In addition to that, on the back of his card, he has Sidestep, which is when this model hits an enemy model with an initial melee attack or melee special attack, it can advance up to 2 inches after the attack is resolved. Important note here for those of you who have not thought about this a lot since Mark II, Sidestep used to ignore free strikes. It no longer does that. He has Sprint, which you should be familiar with from the Warpwolf Stalker. So if he kills a model, he gets to run away. He's Speed 7, so he gets run pretty decently far. On his Hunting Blades, he has Combo Strike, so instead of making 2 initials, he can make 1, which is effectively at POW 14. And then he has Tactician Wolfsworn, which is a pretty big deal. While in his command of range of 9, friendly Wolfsworn models can ignore other friendly Wolfsworn models when determining line of sight, and they can advance through other friendly Wolfsworn can advance through other friendly Wolfsworn models in his command range as long as they clear the base. We'll get back to talking about that here in a minute. On the back of his cards, his spell list includes Death March, which is a cost 3, range 6 upkeep. Target friendly faction unit gains +2 Mat and Vengeance. And I think we may have talked about Vengeance before, but one change to it now is it triggers on damaged, not destroyed, which is important for our multi-wound friends. He has Gallows, a cost 3, range 10, power 13, and when the enemy is hit by that attack, it is pushed d6 towards Gallows' point of origin. So if you channel it through a Gallows Grove, it'll go towards Gallows Grove. If he casts it, it goes towards him. Or if it's Geomancy, because it's in the range, it will go towards that model. He has Storm Rager. Target friendly faction warrior model gains +2 strength, mat, and armor, and cannot be targeted by combined ranged or combined melee attacks. And his final spell is Wind Blast. Costs 2, it's range control, and it's AoE 5, so you can just place it wherever. And it's not an upkeep, so you can do this multiple times if desired. Place a 5-inch AoE anywhere completely within the spellcaster's control range. Cloud effects overlapping that AoE will expire. Models cannot make ranged attacks while they are in the AoE, and it remains in play for 1 round. And then his feat, Darkest Night. While in his control range, friendly faction models gain stealth. When a friendly faction model in his control range destroys an enemy model with a melee attack during its activation, another friendly faction model in Grayle's control range can advance up to 3 inches, and a model can only advance once this turn as a result of Darkest Night, and it lasts for a round. Otherwise, stealth wouldn't be very useful. So, not a lot of stuff changed, actually, on Grayle's card when you start to look at it. His feat's the same. On the spell list, Wind Blast got a little bit better, but mostly stayed the same. And he replaced Awareness with Death March, which was a really, really good change. Awareness kind of didn't do anything. Cost a lot of fury in Mark II. And Death March is great. It helps him support his infantry, which is sort of his thing. Whereas Awareness kind of didn't make any sense. He went up a 1/2 inch on melee on his 2 attacks, which is really helpful. He's still a POW 10 Weapon Master, which is helpful. The Combo Strike's a neat little addition to go up to POW 14. I don't know. There's always sort of a toss-up as to whether or not that makes sense to use versus just making more attacks at POW 10. But there could be an instance where it makes sense. Do note that, and I did read this, but Sidestep will trigger off of the Combo Strike just only once. And in general, the Wolfsworn thing is interesting. So he used to give Mark II Hunter to Wolves of Orboros, which again was sort of marginally useful. Let them charge through forests sometimes to get to stuff, and that I would say was cute. Tactician Wolfsworn, and with all of the other things that are Wolfsworn, and we haven't really talked through a lot of them, is really good because we have things like Skinwalkers, which are Wolfsworn. We have things like Wolves of Orboros, which are Wolfsworn. Morag, the Death Wolves, and all the Reeve models. So what it lets you do is really, and the Vengeance spell really helps with this too, is you could have a line of Skinwalkers kind of leading the way, being a pain in the ass, and then Grayle can charge through them, hit something, kill a couple 2-3 models, or drop a heavy after something else has dinged it up, and then sprint behind that line without caring whatsoever what he's moving through. The same thing for Wolflord Morag, who can hit very hard on his own. And he's an important model. I don't think I would advocate for playing Grayle without bringing Wolflord Morag, as he now has Veteran Leader for Wolfsworn, which means Grayle goes up to Mat 8 without casting Storm Rager on himself even. So, and with Storm Rager, he goes up to Mat 10. And Mat 10 is, you've now sort of peeled over the curve on hitting where most stuff is going to be 4s through 6s, and the 6s is even kind of rare. I mean, there's exceptions where you've got stuff like a Defense 19 Sorsha 1 or Kane 2 or something like that, but those are going to be much more rare, really. Sort of the average stuff he's going to hit. And Storm Rager is also a pretty solid spell on Morag, taking him up to Armor 19 and Mat 10 himself, and then a Power Strength 15 on his sword is also very strong. Having played him a few times, I'm not sure if I have put Storm Rager on Morag. I put it on one of the Death Wolves a couple times. I'm not sure that it has a better home than just being on Grayle. I'll need to play a little bit more before I'm set on that, but Storm Rager is just absolutely one of his key spells. You can take any warrior model and dial it way up. A Reeve Hunter is not a bad target. Any of the wolves, the Death Wolves are a good target. He's a great target. Morag I talked about. Every once in a while you might slap it on just like in a random warrior model in a unit and let him go to town. But most of the time it's going to be on one of those other key models. And it's sort of the late game thing that keeps Grayle ahead of most other casters, right? So if you're playing for attrition and you're grinding them down and they're grinding you down, and at the end you have a defense 15, armor 19, power 12, weapon master with sprint, you've got an edge. In fact, one list I built specifically just to have enough light war beasts in it that if they all died throughout the game, he would still have 6 fury at the end of the game using the new warlock rules. It didn't go that far, but I watched a game, and I forget who he was playing against, where that was that wasn't their strategy, but I saw late in the game that the game kept going because Grayle was able to continue to do work, which is a super strong ability. Death March is really strong. I'd say Wolves of Orboros or the Death Wolf, any of the melee units really. So everything but Reeves are going to be strong with it. Plus 2 Mat has pretty obvious implications. I think the Vengeance is the bigger deal. Being able to get an extra 3 inches of movement just from them killing one wolf or plinking a damage on a Skinwalker can get you to some pretty interesting places. And then the thing is, his feat has always been, in my opinion, very strong. In Mark II, it got compared a ton to Warpath on Chromac 1. And a lot of people felt like it came up lacking because they were really focused on beasts with him, I feel like. And the beasts with Warpath can move themselves 3 inches with that spell. So a lot of times the Stalker will go and Berserk onto something and move 3 inches and Berserk onto more stuff and then sprint away. And that doesn't work because it says another model. What it does, though, is it can really get a lot of interesting positions, and 3 inches of movement in this game is kind of a long ways. Combined with access to something like Gallows, and now you've got a way to move a lot of key pieces much closer to the enemy, or moving your key pieces away another 3 inches. Grayle's really only ever going to move away, I would say, unless maybe you needed to trigger flank with Morag and had no other piece to do so with. But because he has to activate it, nothing can really move him forward 3 inches, so just kind of keep that in mind when you're planning out your turn. But you can move him back another 3, so he can sprint 7, move another 3. That's going to be the difference between him doing work and getting to like a scenario flag or zone, or just staying 10 plus inches from their army, which obviously you can put together at why you'd want to keep your Warlock away from the enemy, and so forth. Gallows is definitely not a spell to dismiss either. One interesting synergy because of how Warwolves work, another model I recommend bringing with Grayle, mostly just because he's going to have a Wolfsworn focus, is the Warwolves, and the Warwolves trigger Sikkim on if you hit if a Wolfsworn model hits an enemy model. That includes Gallows if Grayle casts it. So if Grayle casts Gallows, he pulls you in d6 inches. He does a boosted, if he so chooses, POW 13 to that model, and then the 3 Warwolves get in there, charge it. I suppose theoretically you could have put Storm Ranger on one of them. They all have gang fighter with each other, boosted hit, boosted damage, POW 13s or better. So that's going to be good. I've done a lot of work with Warwolves being able to take down some pretty heavy targets. I had them in my Tanith list, or in a Tanith list that I played early on. And they usually end up, for the 6 points that the 3 of them cost, they usually, if you can keep them safe for a turn, they usually end up hitting above their weight class just a little bit. And the one thing to note about them, though, is they're not actually Wolfsworn themselves, so don't get them trapped behind your Skinwalkers and then not be able to use them. The one thing with Grayle that I'm not too sure about is his battle group. I've sort of experimented. I mentioned I had 6 lights. I experimented with a Feral and Brenos so that I could use the Wind Blasts and Brenos' spell that just shut down shooting altogether. So I still need to experiment there. I don't know what I would exactly recommend with him. He doesn't bring he doesn't really bring anything for his battle group. I mean, Gallows kind of helps, but So I sort of feel like his battle group wants to help him. So I've thought maybe Megalith and a Pureblood. The Wraithbane Animus is definitely helpful for troops. Megalith's always good. More although I don't know that he needs more ways to be more accurate, so much as he needs ways to do damage. Hutchuk might be an interesting inclusion with him, but being a minion model, Grayle does nothing to keep him safe or to help him out or anything like that. So while the Rust Bomb would be nice, I don't really know that you want minion models with Grayle. As far as some non-Wolfsworn models, I would certainly consider Blackclads. The extra 3 inches of movement could possibly get a Hunter's Mark into an interesting position, and Grayle likes to be able to charge farther himself. And obviously, if they have a lot of guys, the spray would be solid. Shifting Stones and Sentry Stones are always worth considering, the latter more than the former. I think his ability to give everything stealth is very strong into certain armies with his feet, so sometimes that's the best use of his feet as well. So if you played Mark II, this guy was kind of considered the laughingstock of Circle, and I would say now and I'm really hoping to give him some more time, maybe down the road, certainly after War Machine Weekend. But I think he's probably gotten to the point where he's towing the line at the top of the faction more than the bottom of the faction, and I'm hoping the Wolfsworn thing gives me a lot of hope that that's only going to improve when we start getting those themes. And I don't know that I would guess that the Wolfsworn theme is first, but I'm sure it will happen. It's a pretty obvious theme in Circle. So that's Grayle. Let's go on to talk about something on the other side of the faction, and that is the Tharn Bloodweaver Night Witch, which is a solo. It is Circle Tharn solo, so kind of obvious, but that's okay. She is speed 7, mat 7, defense 14, armor 11, command 9, pathfinder, and stealth. She's got 2 melee weapons referred to as Implements of Death that are a half-inch melee range and are POW 10 magic attacks. She's a witch after all. 5 damage boxes, cost 4 points, and is field allowance 2. She has a rule on the back of her card called Blood Rituals, which is each time this model makes an attack or damage roll during its activation, it can suffer D3 damage points to boost that roll. The damage is suffered before the roll is made, so if it kills her, you don't get to do anything. She has Killing Spree, which is when a model destroys 1 or more enemy models with a melee attack during its combat action. After that attack is resolved, the model can advance up to 1 inch and make 1 additional melee attack. She has Leadership for Bloodweavers, which means she gives other friendly Bloodweaver models in her command range Killing Spree as well. And then on her weapons, they have Grievous Wounds, which means a model hit by the weapon loses tough and cannot have damage removed from it from 1 round. And Life Drinker, which when she destroys a living enemy model with either of the Implements of Death, immediately after the attack is resolved, she can remove D3 damage points. I haven't played this model a ton. I may experiment with it soon as well. I played it a lot toward the end of Mark II because it kind of had just come out, and it's not too different other than that there are fewer models, fewer infantry models on the table, and that's really what her strength is. Grievous Wounds means a lot of the things that normally prevent us from getting a kill don't. It also is just nice on things like Warbeasts and Warjacks if you happen to snipe out an aspect and you can hit with the Grievous Wounds weapon and keep them from being able to use their spirit or maybe even just mind or body is fine too in a lot of cases. Mind, especially if they're trying to hit her back, trying to hit defense 14, most things are mat 6, and at best you're going to need 8s on 2 dice instead of 3, much less likely to kill her. The killing spree is pretty good too. You wouldn't necessarily think that with all the different changes to the melee range that she's going to be able to get use out of it, but we do have a lot of things that want to sort of bunch up. There's shield wall, there's defensive, it's not called defensive line anymore, wall of iron, and things like, and just other reasons. If you're going for a flag, the unit has to be within 4 of the flag. And so it's going to be pretty conceivable for her to be able to hit 2, 3, 4 models, kill them. With Mat 7, she's pretty likely to hit, but you kind of can, against any single living warrior model, you can play the boost to hit or boost damage game. You probably don't want to risk doing both. So the charge, obviously, you only ever would need to boost the hit. And then hopefully you kill that model, and there's very few ways to not kill that model because of grievous wounds. In fact, I can't actively think of any. Heal your D3. Hopefully you didn't take 3 and heal 1, because that's sort of an awkward position to be in. And then bounce to another model, boost the hit or boost the damage, kill that one, continue. And if you do mess up a roll and miss a roll that you should hit, I should hit a lot of models and don't. She has a second attack. So you killing spree all the first attacks until that runs out. And then if there's something else, you can make your second initial and killing spree again and keep going. Kruger 1's not chain lightning. Kruger 1's lightning tendrils spell, giving her 2-inch melee, is going to be really strong. And do remember with the electro leaps that those are optional. So if it makes more sense to keep making attacks and not electro leaping to kill the thing you need to jump off of, don't electro leap. Definitely a super strong spell. I haven't anything that helps out her mat or damage is going to be really helpful. So Chromax Carnage, for example, taking her up to mat 9 now means you probably don't have to boost those to hit rolls. You can boost the damage rolls, which at POW 10 you're going to need to decently often for what people like to play. You can't put Lightning Strike on her anymore, which is unfortunate. That used to be a trick I really liked. You'd get her in, she'd kill a few models, she'd get out of there. So can't do that anymore. That's okay. The other thing is her leadership is pretty important. So instead of her getting all of those killing sprees, giving them to her Bloodweavers is pretty good. They only have half-inch melee, but they do have gang. And one of the tricks in Mark II, again, was put lightning tendrils on a unit of them, send them into a unit. And now with killing spree, they can kind of chew their way through a unit. They can get the gang bonus where they need to because of 2-inch melee, and they can kind of all maneuver through killing a unit, and they have the ability of grievous wounds weapons as well now too. So they have 1 less attack, and they don't have the ability to boost, but they're sort of like 6 mini Night Witches. So certainly a place to consider trying some stuff out. But in general, she's just a very potent melee solo for 4 points, which is probably makes her just slightly more expensive than she was in Mark II, just by virtue of how the points work out. But being super flexible, and Grievous Wounds even stops damage on Jax, as we talked about last week with Alton Ashley, with a lot less ways to stop it. Obviously, her threat range is a good way to stop it, but the guns, there's things like shield guards and so forth. There's a high lack of shield guards for melee attacks. Madrak 2 is about the only thing I can think of. Makes her a good model into trolls, because she can boost. She probably doesn't need to boost the hit. Their inevitable defense 12, but probably does need to boost the hit their armor, and then gets through their tough, which they sort of rely on. A lot of Signar actually right now. Trencher's having tough, and a few other things having tough. Kador has a lot of tough. I would say a Rusk 2 on his own is probably a good enough reason to try her out in your list, especially if you see a lot of them. And overall, just good. I wouldn't look for her to destroy the entire world at 4 points, but you really just want to look for her to kind of like make her points back, or a little more than her points back. So if you can kill at 4 points, if you can kill more than, most units are somewhere between 7 and 10 points, even for a min unit. So if she can kill doing this math on the fly, but that's half of a 7-point unit, really half of any unit. She's probably ahead, or half of any min unit. So if you think about, that's 3 models. She can get 2 just with her initials and probably jump. So if they have any models on the table, there's a good chance, if with some good placement on your part, and certainly if they have poor placement on their part, that you're gonna get her points back. And then if you start playing her more and more and see where she can safely go in and whatnot, you probably have a pretty good chance to get a lot more than her points worth. I haven't really considered this too much, but telekinesis from someone like Kruger, giving her another 2 inches, Hunter's Mark, giving her another 2 inches on a charge, and things like that also synergize pretty well with her. So that's the Night Witch. I'm not going to go too much deeper there. We'll go ahead and talk about at least one more model. So this is the Woldwatcher. Last figured we would talk about another Wold this week. It's one of the ones we have not yet talked about. So, Woldwatcher is a Circle Light War Beast. Obviously, it's construct. It is Speed 5, Mat 5, Rat 5, Defense 10, Armor 17. It has Advanced Deployment and Pathfinder. And I mentioned it's construct. It is Fury 2 with no threshold. None of the Wolds have threshold, which I think I mentioned before. I believe it still has 24 damage boxes, pretty evenly spread around. It is 9 points and field allowance unlimited. It has a ranged attack, range 10, rate of fire 1, pow 12. It is damage type magical, and 2 melee rune fists, which are half-inch melee range and are power strength 12. Open fists, which are also damage type magical. Its animus is Earth's Blessing, which costs 1, is ranged self, and the spellcaster cannot be pushed, knocked down, or made stationary or moved by a slam, and it lasts for a round. He has Stone Form, which is a rule that lets him force for 1 round or until it advances. He gains +4 armor. His base defense is reduced to 5 and is automatically hit by melee attacks. And then his melee weapon and his ranged weapon both have a rule called Fertilizer, which is when a living or undead model is boxed by an attack with the weapon, center a 3-inch AoE on the box model, remove that model from play, and the AoE is a forest that remains in play for a round. Noteworthy on this model is that it is missing Shield Guard. In Mark II, I would say pre-Bradigus, one of the biggest reasons you would play this guy is because he had Shield Guard, and then you found out, like, oh, for his points, he can kind of, he kills an infantry model with his gun, or 1 or 2 with his fists when they come in, and he's really hard to kill. He can still do those other things, but he doesn't have the Shield Guard anymore. 9 points is at the top of the curve for our light war beasts. And there just doesn't seem to be a home for this guy like there used to be. I think I would still try him out with Bradigus. I have not yet done so. I don't know that you're going to see the days where there are 8 of this guy on the table anymore. Maybe. We'll see what some of the theme forces do. But as it stands, he's being Fury 2, you kind of need to use Stone Form on any turn with him, just because Armor 17 is pretty squishy, especially with Defense 10. Armor 21, not so much, especially not for his points and whatnot. 9 is, that said though, 9 is a little steep when we can look at the War Machine side of things and see that they have 10-point heavy Warjacks, which they're not armor 21 generally, but they are armor things like 18, 19, 20, and maybe not 20, 18, 19, and have another 8 to 10 boxes. So he's still tanky. I would say he still is a piece you want to look at with a caster who's trying to work with Wolds. So in this case, probably just Bradigus. I think Baldur 2 is interesting, but I don't know if they're really doing enough. The list Walter played in Mark II with 3 of them, that was the theme force for Bradigus. I don't know that he really actually did use the shield guard portion of their rules as much, but in some matchups he definitely did and definitely needed it. And really the thing is their melee attacks and ranged attacks were killing infantry models, and occasionally you would spike a roll with the gun into a beast or something, but especially when I played him with Morvana 2, since the rerolls would be pretty important. He often wouldn't have to boost a shot that in other matchups, or without the rerolls maybe you would, or you wish you could have. So he's definitely an interesting piece. I would be interested in seeing him be just a smidgen cheaper or get shield guard back, but I don't know. It's probably a little bit of wishful thinking, and I'm not in charge of what's getting errata and what's not, so that's pretty conjecture. Right now, I would consider playing with Bradigus. He helps get synergy up. He's basically the cheapest way to start getting your synergy up to that +3 to max out. And then they can do a little bit of work then, because you're talking about a mat 8 power 15 fists. That's not bad. The Animus is really good though. We haven't talked about the Gnarlhorn Satyr yet, I don't believe, but it's the other model that has that Animus. Earth's Blessing stops a lot of things you wouldn't expect. Not being able to be made stationary can mean something like Sorsha 1 just doesn't have an assassination on your caster. It can mean no knockdown. I mean, the number of models, or the number of things in the game with knockdown and how good throws are right now, hugely important. Not being able to be pushed can also be really strong into a lot of the control feats, like Kruger if you're playing in a mirror match, and some sort of circle, Kruger 2 rather, if you're playing in some sort of circle mirror match. Ron has a ton of things where he wants to push you around, and so forth. And honestly, there's a bunch of reasons to cast it that I often don't even think of. It's a stronger Animus than Trolls, where their caster might get 4 tough checks before dying, which I recently had happen. But this cute little guy who wants a hug kind of needs a hug himself. Before I would suggest really that he would be in an abundance of lists. Bradigus is trying to give him that hug, but other than that, I guess he's sort of we're waiting to see what else comes out to maybe work with him, or if the errata maybe tweaks him for what he's bringing to be the most expensive melee light that we have. I think feels like they're trying to compensate for how difficult he is to kill. And I haven't played it. It's very possible that I'm mistaken on that. The fact that it has advanced deploy though is maybe the one thing that is very fascinating about the model, and it was in Mark II as well. You start up the board on the AD line, and then if you went second, you can walk 5, get your boosted shot, and you're in the zone, and you're armor 21. Good luck. You're going to have to, generally to kill something that's 9 points in armor 21, you're going to need to send a heavy in. Of course, back when you were doing that before, those heavies were costing, he was 5, and the cheapest heavy they were 6-point heavies, but mostly you did not see that. And at that point, armor 21's getting sort of to the point where infantry are going to have, even high damaging infantry will have some trouble. We used to be able to keep debuffs off of them in the form of spells by using the druids, and you can't do that anymore, which hurts a little bit too. But the AD is definitely interesting. I saw somebody's sort of sarcastically built list where there were 3 of them with Wurmwood, and then they had an entire advanced deploy or ambush force. It's cute. I don't know if it's good. I don't think it's good, but I may try it once just because I have a whole bunch of wolves and it's funny. So not a ton more to say here. I mean, he's the melee guy. Don't discount that gun. It will get work done. I think if we start to see the game sort of shift back to a little bit more balanced lists than we're seeing, in general, he will be better. He's good into like Ret and Khador, Signar, like the factions that kind of want to do a lot of shooting because they're going to have a hard time with an armor 21 piece. And obviously we have a few more ways to heal them. The Stone Shaper can heal them. The Shifting Stones always, as always, can heal them. And yeah, so not a whole lot to add there. I hope to revisit this model at some point and see that maybe it got it found a new home or two. Right now I have not really been playing them. If I find a good time to practice some more Bradigus, I probably will try two to four of them, somewhere in there, I think, just to see how it works. And yeah, that's all for that little guy. All right. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about, okay, there we went, was the Wurmwood list I've been playing. So that list is Wurmwood. Obviously, he comes with Cassius. The battle group is a Feral Warpwolf, Megalith, and a Pureblood. He has all of the sticks and stones, so 2 Sentry Stone of Mannequins, 2 Shifting Stones. Full unit of Tharn Blood Trackers with Nuala. Swamp Gobber Bellows Crew, Hutchuck, and Lanissa Ristle. And I am considering a small tweak to this list. Either I may try out some Griffins in the list, just because I think that Tracker with his feet and the Griffins in general can trade up when you've got things like Hutchuck and Curse of Shadows available, and Primal. Or I may just try a Warpwolf Stalker in place of the Pureblood and the Gobbers. And that's basically because Sprint, I think, is... I was talking with a local who's a pretty good player, and I think Sprint during the feat turn can be pretty important. He can get back, and he has Pathfinder and Reach, so there's a lot of places he can get on the feat turn and do work that a lot of the other beasts cannot. And I don't know that lately I've really felt that I've been getting as much work out of the single Pureblood. I had a list with Brenos in it, and it was Brenos Feral Pureblood at one point, and I think having the 2 guns was doing a little bit more work, but I have liked Megalith getting the ability to Stranglehold something, as that's just an amazing spell to wield, because usually you want to make sure it happens, so frequently you want to boost the hit, frequently you want to boost damage, because the thing you need to stop is probably high armor, and be able to put 3 Fury on a Geomancer to do that is so much better than spending 4 on Wurmwood when he wants to either do more Strangleholds, or he needs to do things like Hellmouth, Dark Path. Occasionally Cassius needs to be able to boost some attack rolls and so forth. So that's why Megalith's in there. I think the Feral's pretty obvious. Primal's good. It hits hard on its own. It plus Primal hits even harder. Basic. Hutchuck is interesting. So he does a couple things. One, if they don't have anything I really feel like I need Rust to deal with, then I probably will ambush him and bring him in to help with the scenario, or to try to kill some infantry. And if I ever get a chance to get a good brain damage off on their caster, that would be pretty amazing as well. But just being able, the quick shot is also really helpful because it's a POW 12 and it knocks down on hit. So you hit, you knock it down, and if it had tough, they're knocked down. So you can frequently get a little easier kill on a tough model there. But Rust is probably the biggest reason I'm bringing him, and with Rust and Curse of Shadows and Prey appropriately placed, Blood Trackers can get up to power and strength 15. 15, which means they can take out some pretty hefty targets themselves. They're also really flexible. Having quick work from which Nuala gives them means that each of them can kill a couple models in a turn potentially. Having range 7 javelins means they don't have to get all the way up to do their damage. Having Prey gets them up to POW 11 against a heavy target in Mat 8 or Rat 8, Mat and Rat 8. Nuala herself, being a weapon master, is actually can be pretty helpful. She's going to get a little more damage in melee, and just being mat 8, rat 7 base means she's as good as any 4-point solo there would be. I know there's been some contention over whether she's worth her points anymore, and I feel like she still is, but I also feel like there's lists where she's not necessary. But that's okay. The Shifting Stones and the Sentry Stones. Sentry Stones are pretty obvious. I've talked enough about them. The Shifting Stones would help make sure I can move Wurmwood around, as well as setting up the possibility for a few assassinations from Teleport Hellmouth shenanigans. Gobbers bring a Prowl Cloud and Cheap Souls, so that's why they're in there. And Lanissa Rissel, we kind of see everywhere, but she's particularly useful here because on the feat turn, that forest is out there, and she can potentially turn off Flight and Pathfinder, which are one of the major ways that you would sort of thwart that feat. So that can be really big. I do feel like this list can play into a huge amount of the game, and I don't know that the list composition itself is hugely important for that. I do like having at least a unit of infantry with her. A lot of people like to bring the Bone Grinders because they're cheap, or a minion of Wolves Warros because they're cheap, or you see like Swamp Gobbers and 2 Gobber Chefs because, again, it's cheap bodies. And obviously I have the Gobbers here and I can do that. I've found I would rather get souls while things are doing work. If I desperately need to have the souls early, I can still kill off a couple Blood Tracker models if I need to, using really whatever. But most of the games I feel like early I don't need those souls, I need them later, and I can set up Blood Trackers where my opponent will help oblige me, or they'll bring models into me, and I can get the souls I need for when I need them. But I don't think I need to sort of burn through points to do that. A lot of people have been playing the Swamp Shamblers and Boker, so if you're making souls, you're also making corpses, which is handy. And then the Shamblers can help Cassius make more forest wall. And blocking line of sight is obviously very strong, as we talked about when we talked about Wurmwood, like reviewing him. Again, and maybe I just haven't play tested as much as some of those other guys, but I don't find that. I find that that's 11 points of hard to get work out of. Not to mention they're not even close to being something that my friends at Griffin's Roost had time to paint. So that's another big factor. But in general, the Shamblers aren't bringing you souls. They're not. They do okay in melee for their points, but they're not really. You're not really counting on work from them. You're hoping the Boker can get quite a bit of work, and he can. But he's range 5. You really need Linissa to boost up, speed 5. You need Linissa's Hunter's Mark really to get him anywhere too useful until really late game. So, and then the battle group. I think you want a battle group that can definitely do work. There are some I want to that I may experiment with after this, but I found that I've played 4 heavies. I did not like it. It was a bit. I felt like I had too much fury out there too often, and I couldn't always get a Shifting Stone or 2 to where I needed it. I might have been able to use Primal a little bit more aggressively and sort of avoid that problem, but it just didn't seem. I didn't like how it was playing out. I like having the unit of infantry, in at least 1 in there. Possibly 2, but again, that'll be a down the road experiment. The big reason for Blood Trackers, and I had Reeves in there, and I've had Wolves of Orboros in there, and I may try more Wolves of Orboros down the road. But the reason for the Blood Trackers is they, being Power 11 weapon masters at range, and then similar in melee if they're charging, puts them in the category where they hit the hardest of anything without necessarily having to engage, which means they can be back a little bit on the feet in the forest, being safe. They have stealth, which nothing else has. They have AD, which nothing else in Circle has. And So they just seem like the best unit to go to. I would like to try, maybe try some Wolf Riders, but they don't have as many souls. Nist Hunters might be good because they're weapon masters in melee, and they have a little bit longer range on their bows. But for now, Blood Trackers seem like the most flexible unit for if I want to deal with armor or if I want to deal with troops. So that's kind of what brings them into my list. Like I said, may try out a Warpwolf Stalker in the list just to see how I may or may not prefer it. More to come on that. I'll hopefully have some good results after War Machine Weekend as to how it did. Planning to play that list in the Last Chance qualifier, and then we'll see what other tournaments, if depending on how that one goes, that I get into. So we're rounding out at about an hour. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up there. Next week, look for an episode about the same time. I will probably be just talking about a couple more model unit entries, unless we get some exciting news between now and then about rules or any new releases. Una 2 is really the only thing that's likely to be out soon that we don't know about that we would get there. But if there is more, we'll probably discuss it, and then the week after or at War Machine Weekend, we'll certainly go in depth talking about Una because I'm pretty excited. Hopefully we can pick up a few other things for Circle. I would really love it if the Storm Raptor was there, and if the Tharn Wolf Rider Champion is there. If not, those will be December releases, so we'll see them soon enough. As always, I would like to draw your attention to the cute little griffin with the paintbrush right here. Griffin's Roost painting. All my models are painted by Griffin's Roost. She paints fantastically. You can find examples on her website at griffinsroostpainting.com or on Facebook if you search for Griffin's Roost Painting. And if you have any commissions you're looking for, then feel free to shoot a message and they'll work with you to get you what you need. So, and on that note, look, if you're catching this on YouTube, the live stream is on twitch.tv/cheddarcaveman, and if you are catching this on the live stream, look for the upload to YouTube either later tonight or tomorrow at youtube.com/cheddarcaveman. And if you have any questions you want me to discuss or just follow-ups from the podcast, you can contact me at Cheddar Caveman on probably every bit of social media that you can possibly imagine. So until next time, thanks for listening.